You may be seated. Thank you for coming to Kaylea Littleton's oral today. We're super excited to hear what she has to share with us, and I hope that you could glean something from it today. So if you would pray with me before Kaylea starts. King Jesus, thank you for today. God, I thank you for your goodness and your kindness to us, God. God, thank you for your nearness in this moment. God, I pray for Kaylea. I pray that you would give her peace that surpasses all understanding in this moment in time, God, and that you would just give her the words to say and help her to recall the things that she has prepared for us today. God, we love you. Thank you for the rain. Thank you for who you are, Lord, and for your glory, all of this today. It's in your name I pray. Amen.
Imagine that your friend has just offended you, and this is not the first time. You feel angry and embarrassed, but you decide to get over it because it's better to get over it rather than confront them. Imagine that you have a deadline due, and you and your colleagues cannot get on the same page. You feel angry and not willing to compromise, but you would rather continue to disagree and talk badly about them rather than confront them. We have all been there. Since the fall of man, our sinful nature has created a dismissive world. With that in mind, we have to confront conflict head-on in a Christ-like way. Before we dive into resolving conflict, we must understand what friendship is. Friendship is a gift given by God. His friendship with us is perfect. He always loves, willing to sacrifice anything so we can stay in a relationship with Him. We are wired to pursue community with others, and through Jesus, we can truly love and serve the people around us well. Being a godly Christian friend means pointing others to Christ, even if it means sharing hard truths. In John 15, he says, "My command is this, love each other as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friend." God calls us to be unified with others and love them like Christ loves. We all desire to have a friend who is kind, consistent, and maybe even perfect. But if we rely on this kind of relationship on earth, we will never be satisfied because no friend is perfect. But if we pursue friendships like Christ does, conflict will not be harmful. In the book Servant Leadership by David Kuhner, he introduces the principles of what it means to live within the two circles. These are the two different ways that we can choose to view the world. The two circles teach us to take ownership of our lives by escaping from the limits of false perspective. Living in the victim circle focuses on how the world affects us. This can lead to some negative consequences like always feeling helpless or never taking control of any situation. When we live in the victim circle, we lead with emotion, never seeking truth. Living in the freedom circle, we can seek truth and influence the world around us. This can lead to a life in control regardless of what may happen. We can take responsibility by making our own decisions. Depending on which circle you choose to live in, this can affect how you resolve conflict. When living in the victim circle, we tend to blame others for the wrong to try to make ourselves feel better. But in reality, the conflict will never be solved. By learning to view the world in the freedom circle, we can grow as a community. There are two sides to every conflict, the offender and the offended, which mankind has been on both sides of. The offended has a choice to forgive and grow. The offender who hurt them has a chance to admit that they were in the wrong, apologize, and grow. Each side must communicate how they are feeling in order to seek peace with one another. Both sides can grow together to be better people and continue on loving each other well. Conflict is normal and very necessary. Many people think that conflicts always lead to painful and destructive ends, but it does not have to. Conflict can be how we work through our differences and seek unity amongst others. What happens when we not resolve conflict? From a personal experience, when I decided to dismiss an argument with my friend, it hardened my heart even more towards that person. By avoiding the issue, I became more angry with that person, and the growth of that friendship was hindered. Dismissing conflict can be harmful because we're not allowing honest communication with that person. This can lead to ongoing conflict that just builds up more frustration. Oftentimes, we don't actually know how to confront to not offend them, so we just dismiss it altogether. There are tools that exist to resolve conflict. In the book, Caring Enough to Confront by David Augsburger, he talks about 5 styles of conflict that we can face, keeping in mind that there is a time and a place for each, and the main goal is to work for a greater purpose. Conflict does not just occur between friends. It happens in all of our relationships in life, whether that be a boss, a colleague, a family member. The first one is I win, you lose. This style can occur when the issue is clear and simple about who is right and who is wrong. It can be useful when time is very short or when intervention is necessary. The main point of this style is when the solution to the conflict is very clear and both people can move forward. The second style is I am uncomfortable, so I'll withdraw. This style occurs when trying to fix the problem and change is rejected, so you have to overlook the situation. This style is a way out of conflict, not a way through it. This position can be useful if it is threatening and the person needs to get out, but no side wins. The third style is, I'll yield to be nice since I need your friendship. Deciding to yield from a conflict can be helpful when we need to keep harmony between each other. Although this style can be useful in certain situations, you cannot use this style in every situation. When you hide your feelings from the light, you can become more tense and bitter on the inside and submissive on the outside. The fourth style is, I have only half the truth and I need your half. This style is a compromise for both parties. This should be the easiest style because we're both coming together, meeting halfway with our wants and needs to try to resolve the tension. This style is useful when compromising on a temporary agreement will satisfy until you can refine it at a better time. The fifth style is, I want relationship and I also want honesty and integrity. This style of confronting conflict is very neutral. Each party comes together with a mindset of caring for one another and love. The good thing about this style is that both people can become better for it. This style was made for relationships to last and build each other up in love. I am fortunate enough to have this kind of relationship in my life. Although we are not perfect, this friendship took time to grow through trusting one another in love and conflict and wanting what's best for each other. By trying our best to work through our differences and sharing truth with each other, we have built a long-term relationship that lasts. To sum it all up, the 5 styles are 1. I win, you lose. 2. I win out, I'll withdraw. 3. I'll give in for the good of the relationship. 4. I'll meet halfway. And 5. I care and confront. Although all these styles are useful, it is important to note that the 5th one is the most effective. Carefronting is growth promoting. It is a balance of truth and honesty that is for long-term relationships that are meant to last. Do not believe the lie that there's a time for caring and a time for confronting, because in our world, it is meant to grow relationships and help us seek unity as Christ has called us to. As Christians who struggle with confronting conflict, we can look to Jesus for guidance. Throughout the Gospels, Jesus defined himself by saying who he is and what his mission is. He never controlled or manipulated others to agree with him. Instead, he asked questions and invited others into conversation to see where they stood in relation to him. Knowing this, Jesus did 2 key things when he was faced with conflict. He stayed defined and connected. What does being defined mean? We define ourselves when we say clearly and boldly who we are, what we want, and what we will or will not do. Then we allow others to define themselves. We invite others to say who they are and what they think, even if it is different from us. Oftentimes, instead of defining ourselves and allowing others to do the same, we focus on controlling, manipulating, or blaming others for the wrong to try to make ourselves feel better. This is not what Jesus did or how he desires us to love. Now that we know what it means to stay defined in our conflicts, let us look at how to stay connected. Jesus was a perfect example of his ability to stay connected with people who did not like him or understand his mission. Look at his relationship with Peter. Jesus knew that he was going to be betrayed by Peter, but yet he still remained in close relationship with him. Even on the cross, when he was miserable, Christ connected to his enemies by asking his Father in Luke 23:34, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they're doing." Staying connected to others is when we honor and truly love the people around us. We can help them live out their calling by pointing them closer to Christ. When we stay defined and connected with others through conflict like Jesus, we can realize that confronting others does not have to be difficult. I interviewed Erin Byford, MA LPC, to gain a counselor's perspective on how to resolve conflict the right way. Ms. Byford said, "Relationships are risky and valuable if we look at it in a biblical worldview. We are made in God's image and he is a relational being. We are called to relationships. They are worth something. Aside from that, we live in a fallen world. Everyone is imperfect, and that makes relationships really risky. Relationships are important. When you confront, there's never a guarantee of a successful outcome. We can do our best, but we all have responsibility in the conflict." One of the things I discussed with Erin Byford is healthy avoidance. Healthy avoidance is when you absorb grace with the other person. She stated, "If we begin to build resentment and bitterness, it's probably not best just to let it sit. especially if offense is repeated over and over again. Both people bear responsibility in a confrontation. When we fester unhealthy habits like gossip, anger, or avoidance, those are signs of when confrontation is beneficial. Healthy communication is a good beginning to conflict resolution. There are some things we have to do to calm ourselves before the conflict is resolved. In order to be loving in our relationships, we have to reflect on ourselves and define the emotions we are feeling so we can prevent any outbursts of our emotions. We have to keep in mind that confronting someone does not mean we need to point blame or make them feel less than, but rather invite them in to bear your responsibility in the situation and allow freedom for change. On the other end of the conflict, hearing that you are in the wrong or the friendship needs change is really hard. By establishing the diary of growth, seeking truth, and loving that person well, we can start the process of change and not demand. Conflict resolution has been a constant struggle in my life. There have been relationships where I should have confronted and times where I've confronted the wrong way. I tend to let the anger inside of me affect how I confront. In my eyes, dismissing conflict seemed to be the best option. But what I've realized is conflict does not have to be unnatural if I follow a few guidelines. Before confronting, it's important to address and control our emotions before talking to that person. The question, who is to blame, is not effective and should not matter because responsibility fosters change. When we confront, we have to be careful in how we ask questions. Questions that help clarify and ask for information are useful for seeking truth. But when we ask questions that only have one answer or they're used to control and criticize the other person, it can lead to misunderstanding. How you confront is by remaining clear and avoiding use. For example, you hurt my feelings, you make me angry. Instead of pointing blame, we can be clear in how we confront by using I's. For example, I am angry, I am feeling this way. When we do this, it helps control our emotions. With the goal for change, it does not mean we should demand the other person to agree. In order for us to be respectful and loving to the other person, we have to be willing to see their side of the situation too. Anytime we have to address conflict, it is vital to meet face to face. Hiding behind a phone screen just creates misunderstanding by reading in between the lines or typing out things you do not actually say. If you want to strive to be loving, communication between each other is important. What happens if confrontation is rejected? If we have done our best to resolve the tension the right way, but our friend has not taken it well, it's essential to understand that it is not your fault. You've left everything on the table, and we cannot force that other person to accept what we are saying. So we have to let go of that burden that's making us regret confronting or thinking that it's all our fault, and allowing the other person to evaluate what they're feeling. In order to be a friend that promotes truth and love, we need to be willing to confront conflict. Before we confront, it is important to have control over our emotions. Speak in a way that is calm. State the actual facts and be respectful to others when confronting. This guideline is not always easy, but in order to invite change, we have to be clear when we confront. Conflict is a part of our everyday life, whether there be a little disagreement or a lifetime betrayal. If we decide to be dismissive in conflicts and all of these pass by, we are missing out on opportunities to grow and build stronger relationships in our community. Society today tells us a lie that it's better to have conflict and avoid it rather than face it the right way. Confrontation the right way opens discussion up in love, honesty, and truth rather than built up anger and blame. Taking the first step to confront is the hardest part. Not knowing how they will react or not knowing how to respond is very overwhelming. We have to look within ourselves and to the Lord in order to discuss and grow in a calm way. Realizing that no one is perfect and we are made in the image of God allows us to offer and receive the mistakes that we have committed. Confrontation is scary and never promised, but a community where there is trust is where growth and restoration can exist. Thank you. Thank you.
On. Hello? Okay, great. Yes, great job, Kaylee.
Thank you.
I realized, sorry, audience, I forgot to introduce our panel. So I'm Miss Pittman. I've had the pleasure of being Kaylee's senior project this year, and then with me is Mrs. Gladson and Mr. Custer. So if you don't know us, there you go. Anyways, so Kaylee, what are your plans after graduation?
So I will be attending Dallas Baptist University. Go Pats! Yes, and I'll be majoring in education to pursue a career in school counseling.
Awesome. Yes, I'm very excited you chose to go to my alma mater. Okay, so to start off easy, I thought of a really fun question to ask you. If you were a basketball coach, you have a starting five in basketball, who would your starting five be and what position would they play?
Okay, so I've kind of thought about this, but
Right.
so Brett would be the point guard, and then my dad and Hannah would be the wings. And then for comedic relief, it would be my mom and Tavid as posts. Oh, yes. And Drew and Bryce are the bench warmers. But, 12th man, you're so valued.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Kaylee. So you chose to do your thesis over conflict. So what produced that thought that you wanted to do that, and what kind of inspired this idea?
Yes, ma'am. So, the really close people in my life know that I am really bad at confronting conflict. I tend to just kind of ghost them and act like everything is fine, but really it's not, and so it just creates more tension. So, and I thought, everyone struggles with conflict because we're all imperfect, and conflict is just a part of our everyday life. So I just thought, why can't I not share how to do it better?
Yeah, that's awesome. I will say that I think you've grown in confronting people after doing much research and spending a lot of time on this. It's been a really joy and honor to watch you as you've dealt with just situations where you've had to confront people. So I've seen you grow in that area, which is really sweet.
Thanks.
So you mentioned The Lord of the Flies, and I have never read that book. With that being said, as you gave us a brief just description in your paper, in your life, have you had leaders like Jake, and how did you respond to such a leadership? And maybe explain who Jake is in the story so that the audience would know.
So these couple boys, they get stranded on a island by themselves, and so all the boys kind of have to fend for themselves, and so then they create a group, and with every group there's always a leader, and so I think it's Jack is kind of the leader that he's just a boy, and he wants to hunt and have so much fun, and then Ralph, that's his name, right? Ralph. Okay, one of the other guys. Ralph, he kind of has more structure, and he's no, we have to do this the right way. And so wait, what was your question?
Have you ever had a leader like Jake, and how did you respond?
Yes, I have had a leader similar to Jack. Jake,
I don't know.
Jake, I don't know.
Sorry.
I read the book. Anyway, so, yes, I have had a leader like that. And what I've realized is sometimes you just kind of have to be your own leader, and you kind of have to, I'm not a bold leader, hey, come march with me. I'm kind of I'd like to say that I'm a lead by example type of person, because I'm not designed that way. And so I've realized that, if there is a leader that I don't agree with or I don't like what they're doing to the other people, I reflect on myself, and then I just stay true to who I am and true to the Lord, and just kind of lead by example and encourage others around me.
Yeah. When I was reading this, I thought about some leaders that you've had that we've discussed in my office, and I think that you've done just that. I think that you have responded in a way that you've stayed true to yourself and true to your morals, and that's been encouraging to me and challenged me in my own ways of when I've had leaders in my life that I didn't agree with, and how to respond in a Christ-like manner. And so you continue in your paper about offenders and the offended. And I think a lot of confrontation deals with, confronting people. And so when you have to confront somebody that may not necessarily know that they've wronged you, what is that like? Have you been on that side where it's like someone has wronged you, they don't know that they've wronged you, and so you've had to go and confront them? How have you done that well? Maybe did you do that poorly before studying about confrontation?
It really depends who it is, if that makes sense. If they like have continually like, if they have joked around or, offended me over and over again because they think it's funny or, whatever, I kind of just dismiss it. I'm like, you know what? I know they're joking. I know they still love me. I'm just going to move on with my life because I realize that it's a joke and it hurts me a little bit. And then I realize I value my emotions and I'm like, you know what? This doesn't matter. And I don't really need to confront them. But if they've really like offended me and I just cannot get over it, I just go up to them and I say, hey, like, what you said to me kind of hurt my feelings, and and then tell them like these are the emotions that I'm feeling. I would just love it if we could, work together and understand each other. Of like, okay, how can we not do this again or whatever.
So like, what is the balance of knowing I'm going to dismiss this in a healthy way versus this is whether they know that they offended you or not? Going on the same scenario, like I'm going to dismiss this or I need to confront them. How does one know when to confront them?
Yeah, that's good. So I think that when they have offended you, I think if it is still like hurting you inside after like a couple days or it is happening over and over again and it still hurts, I think it's best to go confront them because, you can also use your discernment of like, okay, who said this to me? Oh yeah, like I don't see, like if it's a person that you don't want to have like a long-term relationship with or that friendship isn't really like present in your life, then I think that's time like, okay, well maybe I could dismiss this, allow grace and forgiveness in that. But if you want, for like my close friends, if they have offended me, I really do think it is beneficial to go like confront them, say, hey, this, I've been struggling with this, I feel this way, and, work to, realize and be better for it.
So the flip side, you've offended somebody and you don't know that you've offended them. And they come to confront you, what does that look like? I guess the greater question I'm getting to is why do we, as the people that are offending people, like why don't we realize that we've hurt people before they come and confront us about it?
Let's see. I think jokes are really hard because I'm kind of a emotional person, I'd say. And jokes sometimes kind of hurt my feelings, and there have been times where I'm like, man, that really hurt my feelings. And then times where I'm like, okay, I know that they're joking. I know this is a joke. Like, move on. And so I think oftentimes when we joke around, we don't realize, like, oh, this could be offensive. And so I think when it comes to jokes or trying to be honest and then not take it the right way kind of makes us in that position.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which I think it's always I think it's easier for us to joke with the people we're probably closest with. And I think it's also important to seek clarity when someone is joking, which is like a deeper topic I will probably get into later. But I think it's important, like you said, to be able to distinguish, like, okay, I know this is a joke versus like they're intentionally trying to hurt me. So, Kaylea, great job.
Thank you.
I appreciate you speaking on this topic because I'm also very bad at it. So it was a very enlightening paper, and I liked your speech a lot.
Thank you.
So you talk about the 5 styles and how there's kind of maybe a place for all of them, but what you call carefronting is most effective, right? Do you think that there are times when even that style, carefronting, is destructive in a relationship?
Yes. So I think it's pretty telling when the offense is repeated over and over again, and that you've done your best to address the situation, and you're trying to allow like freedom to change and to be better, but it still like is not working. And then obviously gossip is a really hard thing in life to stop doing, and it's really easy to get into. So I think just realizing, I think evaluating, okay, who is this friend? How are they beneficial to me? How do we grow each other up closer to Christ? But I really do think if the offense is repeated over and over again, then we need to realize, okay, is this the kind of friendship that I want to pursue?
Okay, so there are times when you should just say, I'm going to let that relationship go and choose not to confront them because it's not best for me or them, you're saying? Yeah. Okay. That's good. What about for the person being confronted? Can you think of a way that carefronting might be kind of destructive on that end?
Like I said in my paper, hearing that you're in the wrong or the friendship needs change is really hard because, well, for me, when I hear that I'm in the wrong, my pride gets in my way, and I'm like, whoa, I didn't do nothing wrong. And then, I look back at that, and I'm like, oh, wait, I did. And just, I think, I don't know, pride gets in the way. Realizing that, oh man, I'm not perfect is really hard. And then also, I think there's two sides to a friendship, and people need to meet. 50-50, but really it's both need to be 100% all in if they want to have a carefronting relationship. And so I just think if they're I don't even like you anyway or whatever, it's just okay, well, I really do believe that the Lord opens and closes doors in your life of okay, this is a friend for this season, and then this is a friend for another season.
That's good. Okay, I can think of at least one relationship where hopefully it's not seasonal. But your sister, for example, I can't imagine that you'll ever say, you know what, I have to cut ties with you and move on. Right?
No.
I am married, and I don't see myself ever doing that to my husband, right? So, what about in those situations where it's really not an option to cut ties with that person and move on? Do you think that there are things we should do rather than confront everything that offends us?
Okay, so for me and Hannah, for example, I will never stop being best friends. So I think when something is bothering you a lot and it's really is heavy on your heart, and I think that's when it's best to hey Hannah, I'm having a problem, I really want to talk through this. And also depending on the offense and how big it is, I don't think that just one confrontation or one evening of heavy talk can be just oh, we solved everything. So I really do think in a marriage, I've never been married before, but I think in a marriage, and especially in a family relationship, that you just have to keep working and keep realizing God loves you, God loves me, God wants us. There's a reason why we're together. I mean, there's nothing, like, there's no sin that we can't figure out and work better towards. But, for instance, when me and Hannah have little fights, like, you're wearing my shirt, or you can't wear those shoes, or da-da-da-da, just like, we get mad in the moment, but realizing, like, okay, this will be, like, realizing this is such a little disagreement of a long time to being together. So it's just, like, discerning whether or not, like, if, clothes are going to really break us apart. Hopefully not. I don't know yet.
That's good. I think, there's lots of things in the moment that feel like the end-all, be-all when you're, like, in the argument. Or even before the argument starts. And I think an important part of conflict that I've learned is sometimes you have to just, like, lay yourself down and go, this isn't worth, like, a down drag out. Right? So that's really good. So as two conflict avoidant people, we probably both had the thought of, like, why are we even doing this? Why can't I just live as a hermit and not ever talk to anybody, right? So why is it so important that we practice this and do it well?
Yes, ma'am. So I am a big people pleaser, and I don't know about you, but I think people who tend to, like, regret, oh no, why did I do this? I messed up this friendship. Like, now there's this awkward tension. It's really, like, comes down to the line of, like, man, I haven't created conflict, but this is kind of, like, stirring up some emotions, and because, like, especially with the people that I confront, I really don't want to hurt their feelings, and I don't want them to be angry and disappointed in themselves, and I don't want them to, feel like they're a horrible person. So that's just, like, the people pleaser in me, that I'm like, oh no, like, it's okay, everything's fine, but it's really not. And so I think just realizing, like, this is good, like, this conflict is good, and realizing and discussing, like, hey, I still love you, and you're still a great friend, you're still a great family member, but this needs to happen, and I would really love it if we could, grow to be better. So.
The last question, and then I'll pass it to Mr. Custer. In your interview, your interviewee, Aaron Byford, said, relationships are worth something, and you talk a lot about how they're valuable. So what value do relationships have for us?
I think that, if we look back in the beginning, like, Adam, if he didn't have Eve, I assume he would be really lonely. And so I really do believe that God doesn't want us to be lonely. Like, he doesn't want to be lonely. Like, he invites others in. He wants everyone to, like, love and have a relationship with him. And so I just think that that's kind of him giving us friends and people and community. That's just part of his love, of being like, let's all worship and have fun and be joyful all together.
Good answer.
Well done, Kaylea. Well,
thank you.
I probably am, on the same boat with, I guess, you guys. That I am a people pleaser, and I don't handle conflict really well. So I actually, enjoyed reading through your oral. It was really good and insightful, and I feel like I learned some things. Kind of wish my younger self would have been able to know this. So one question I had, maybe to begin, is there a story or a movie or a person, a character in a story that exhibits handling conflict really well?
Let me think. So my dad is the athletic director, and so he has to deal with a lot of conflict with angry parents or parents of the team. And so there was one time, it was at a basketball game, and it was getting really heated, and there was this mom up, and they were on the other team, and my dad is like the bouncer of MCAA sports, so, if anyone's acting, not how they're supposed to, my dad is supposed to like kindly say, get out. And so there was one time this lady just got really mad at my dad, and I like watched the whole thing happen. I was like, ugh. And I was like, oh, and I was like, go dad. Anyway, so this lady was like yelling at him, like cussing at him, and my dad was just like, you gotta go, like, I'm sorry, like, I'm gonna call the cops, like, if you don't go, like, I don't know, the way he just like handles conflict is, in that sense, is just like, I'm like, wow, he has a lot of like, he doesn't get angry. He's very like, he keeps his composure. We've talked a little bit. He's like, I don't really like to do it, but it has to be done kind of thing. And so I think just looking at how he confronts that kind of situation, I can look at my smaller arguments and, staying calm and being like, all right, like, this is how it is and this is what needs to happen.
It's a great testament to have in your family to see and grow up with. That is really, really wonderful. Do you think that in order to handle conflict well, you talk about controlling your emotions? Do you think you have to have that down? Do you have to be able to control those emotions, or do you think you can handle conflict, fairly well without doing that?
I really do think that you need to have control of your emotions, because if it is just a yelling battle, nothing will get solved, and y'all will both just separate and still be angry. And also realizing like what you're feeling and how the emotions affect you and how the other person affects you allows for true like honest communication, and it gets straight to the point of like, okay, why are you angry? This is why I'm angry. Okay, now let's like figure out and try to fix it.
Yeah, I feel like that's one of the ways that I haven't been, great when I was growing up, is being clear about my feelings. And I thought, well, I'd rather be at peace with people. I'd rather allow things not to get blown up or one person do something they're going to regret. So I think it's better just to be at peace and not be honest with where I'm at. Do you think people who are able to understand where they are emotionally handle conflict better? Or do you have to have that humility to understand and look at yourself first to handle conflict well?
I think so. Everyone is different, so, but it's in order to have really good confrontation and to make it better, I really do think that, someone who, because I've realized, so before I did this, I reacted like immediately. I was angry, and I was like, so angry, and didn't realize anything. And then when I realized, like, okay, this isn't the right way. Like, this isn't going to work. And realizing that, like, when someone's confronting me, I have to take a deep breath, like, understand what they're saying, and then respond in a calm way, because then it starts the process of just honest communication.
I'm curious, do you think guys and girls deal with confrontation differently?
I think so.
Do you think one's more naturally better at it?
Yes. So, I can't speak for all women, but I get really emotional, like, really fast, and I react in my emotion. But there have been people in my life, like, men and boys in my life, where they kind of think in, like, a logistical way of, like, okay, they actually look at the actual facts and, like, wait, sometimes I think, for me at least, I read into the tone or I overthink, and I'm like, wait, what? That's so mean. And then, I'll talk to like my dad or, and he's like, well, that's not, they didn't actually say that, or, you know what I mean? So I really do think that most men, I can't speak for all of them, but think that they kind of look at the facts. And also, I really do think that men kind of get over it faster, or they aren't as offended. You know, like boys like to joke with each other. And like sometimes when I'm hearing the jokes going back and forth, I'm like, oh my, that's so rude. And then, but they think nothing of it because, I don't know, that's just how boys work. But that's just not for me.
Yeah, maybe that is, that is an aspect where maybe they aren't really being open and honest with themselves first, so that they are entering into relationships meaningfully. And, maybe it looks like they handle it because they don't just do a lot of confronting, but they aren't really being honest with who they are and what they want. And so they don't learn to express those things, and it stunts them, not in an outward manner, but in an inward manner. I kind of think that guys and girls both don't handle confrontation well. And it's part of God's plan, like you're talking about, to help us kind of grow in love, to open up within ourselves, and to go move outward. That makes me wonder, one last question here before I pass it on. What do you think God does with the person who doesn't want to handle conflict? Do you think God has a way of helping them, or are they just lost if they don't want to repair relationships or confront someone about something?
I think, so sometimes when God's trying to tell you something, it doesn't just happen in one thing. So it's like if they are just continually not taking it well and not realizing they think that they're perfect and that everyone else is the problem, I really do think there can be a point in life where they realize, oh man, like I am the problem. Like I am, this is what I'm struggling with. And I do think that the Lord, at some point, maybe when it's happened over and over again, they realize like, oh, well, maybe I need to change, or maybe this is how God is telling me to be a better friend. And I also think that we can learn from our mistakes, learn from our past friendships or relationships, and realize, okay, how can I be more like Christ, and how can I be a better friend, be a better boyfriend, girlfriend.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think looking back on those repeated wrecked relationships and realizing people don't really want to be friends with me is one way that they can wake up and go, okay, maybe it's not them, it's me. Okay.
Okay. Going kind of off of what Mr. Fester was sharing, I've recently become known about a thing called a false narrative, and so how we as believers will tell ourselves essentially lies about situations, people, things. What do you believe is a false narrative that maybe you have told yourself in the past year of your life in regards to conflict, whether it's like Tavin's really mad at me and Tavin wasn't really mad at you, but you overthought and misread the situation?
For me, there've been a couple of my relationships where I'm like, oh, I am never in the wrong. I've never done anything wrong. I am perfect. But realizing oh, that is, God telling me no, you're not perfect. And I think, even if in the moment you haven't done anything wrong, or you think you haven't done anything wrong, it's important to look back and okay, so if I have to give in 100% and this person has to give in 100%, where am I lacking? And I've definitely struggled with the fact of it's never my fault, but it definitely, sometimes it wouldn't be my fault, but there have been times where in that same example where, I could be working better in this with better communication, better encouragement, stuff like that.
Yeah. I like how you said, both in your oral and in your paper, how Jesus asks questions. The older I get, the more I realize that confrontation is better started with asking a question rather than saying such things as you shared, you hurt me. and I kind of started to get into this in my first set of questions, and I was like, I gotta pass this mic. But for the people in the room that may be dealing with conflict right now with maybe a sibling or a parent or maybe a friend or maybe their spouse or boyfriend or girlfriend, whatever relationship it may be, what like questions would you encourage them to ask? Because you say towards the end that taking the first step to confront is the hardest part, and I think like tying it all together is like, okay, it's not you coming up with saying like you did me wrong, but then also you tying in the asking of questions. What does that look like for them to take a first step in confronting?
So for my relationships, when I realize, oh, like something seems off about this person or they don't seem well, I think asking like, hey, like, are you okay? Like, I've realized this. Instead of being like, are you okay? What's wrong? Like, tell me everything kind of thing. More of like, hey, I've noticed this. Are you okay? Like, I'm here for you. I think asking questions like that. And then, if there's a more specific example of like, hey, I said this, and I realized like you got a little dismissive or you got a little angry, like, are you doing okay? Like, have I hurt your feelings? And then also, I don't know, I really do think, the being bold and being like, okay, I'm going to go confront them is the hardest part for me. Just being like, okay, here we go kind of thing. But realizing like, hey, can I talk to you? Something's been bothering me kind of thing opens it up. Not really being like, what's your problem? Or, are you mad? Kind of just being like, hey, I've realized this. Are you doing okay? I think that is probably best.
Yeah. You share about screens and the lovely device that exists next to us all the time, it feels like. Do you recommend that you just shoot a text and say, hey, are you good?
No.
And why is that?
So, when you ask, like, going into it's like, oh, okay, I'm going to ask this person if they're okay. And you could realize, like, okay, I know that they're going to respond to me, and I know that they're going to say something. So I don't think that saying, are you okay, is best on text. I just think that there needs to be a time. And, sometimes there can't really be a time. And so sometimes, like, when me and Tavin have to talk through each other, we're like, hey, do you want to go to Sonic? Now I know when she asked me, hey, do you want to go to Sonic? I'm like, oh, okay. But Sonic is our place where we hash it out. But I think being like, hey, can I call you? Or, hey, can we go to lunch? Can we do this? But I really do think talking on the phone screen kind of creates misunderstanding. Like, sometimes I have no idea the tone. We don't know the tone of voice that they're talking in. They could be totally mad or they could be totally fine. And also, sometimes we text bold things, that in your mind that, oh, I would never say this, but I'm going to right now because I can't see their face. So I just think confronting them in person is the best. I know it's really hard because, I've struggled with it. I have texted, I've confronted people on text, and it's not the best. But I also am the type of person where I have to address my feelings. And sometimes when I am confronting them, like, spur of the moment, I just kind of word vomit, and everything just is like, it's not matching together, and they don't understand at the end what I'm talking about. So, like, sometimes, and this is probably weird, I like type out what I'm going to say before I go up to them and say it, and kind of look back at it and realize, okay, this is what I want to say. This is how I want to be clear. But taking, making a habit to be like, hey, do you want to go get Sonic? Hey, do you want to call? Hey, can I talk to you? Like, I think is a first step to making confrontation a good habit.
Yeah. As someone who is a really bad texter and really does not communicate my feelings well over text, I think that's a great way, and I'm glad that you have gleaned that knowledge from this, and hope that as you continue, because you will, surprise, deal with a lot more confrontation, especially as you go to college, and so I'm encouraged to hear that you wouldn't rely on texting.
So I want to go back to what we were talking about earlier. Say in a relationship, I keep dragging Hannah into this, but like Hannah's or Tavin or somebody that you're just not ever going to cut ties with, if you try to approach them in a healthy way about something that's been bothering you, and they kind of start either like blaming or manipulating you. I know you guys would never do that, but just for hypothetical, what's your tactic then moving forward in the conversation?
So this hasn't been my all-time tactic. I have just figured this out. I think in talking about the pride thing of hearing that you were in the wrong is really hard. And then also they are probably really mad and they don't realize, oh man, I feel like a horrible person. I didn't realize I did this to you, or, no, I didn't do that. Then be like, okay, that's fine. And then I think allowing healthy space, and being like, okay, I know, I believe that they can evaluate their emotions. So taking a step back, realizing that, they just need to evaluate what they're feeling. I'm content in that way of being okay, I'm going to take a step back. And usually, we would, talk back together and everything would be better because, they've okay, I have realized that, what I'm feeling, and now you can start that process. So I think just taking a step back, not necessarily ghosting them or, being rude, but just taking a step back, still loving them, still acting like normal, but also giving them the time to feel what they're feeling.
And then would you, maybe if they don't, would you bring it back up later and say, hey, now that you've had some space, this still hurts my feelings and I just kind of want to talk about it again? Or do you think you would wait for them to make the next move?
I think it depends how long it is. There's never really, I don't think there's a timeline of, confronting. There's never, because I'm doing my research, there's no, outline of how to do it. Because, there are different sides to conflict or different, just situations. And so giving them the time and, determining okay, I think it's been long enough, or if this tension has gotten worse, being hey, remember what we talked about? I would really like to discuss this more, I think is beneficial. But, for instance, for Tavin or Hannah, I have trust that they, know that they'll make the next move, or because they love me and because they want to still have a great relationship, I know that they're going to make the first move, because I realize the longer you've spent time with someone, we kind of think the same, and so we also realize, the same social cues of okay, it's time, kind of thing.
That's good. Kind of going off what Miss Pittman was talking about. So next year, you won't be close to those people, some of them, right? Or they won't live in the same town as you. So if you're not going to shoot a text, you'll also be busy going to class and trying to make new friends. How do you plan on handling conflict with people that still live here or live in College Station or live wherever when you can't see them face to face a lot?
I think, texting is not ideal, but I really do think calling or FaceTiming, I think that is also beneficial, especially if the conflict that you need to confront the conflict urgent, being okay, I need to call you, or if, I don't know, if we both get really busy and then we have time of like, okay, we're sitting together, no one's around us, okay, let's have this discussion. I think that's probably how I would do it.
Good. Thank you.
Well, I think that's a great place to end our discussion there. You've answered really wisely about some very practical issues, that everyone has to deal with that God has placed in their life. So we're going to turn the mic over to you to ask us a question.
I kind of gave them a little bit of a heads up, so I'm really sorry. So I'll start over here. It's a similar question, kind of. So as y'all know, Ms. Pittman is going to be going to DBU to become a resident director, right? Okay,
That's right.
just making sure. Anyway, so I just want to ask the question, how do you confront conflict as an upcoming resident director?
Great question. Thank you for preparing. So, funny thing is that Tavin and Kaylea will also be living in the dorm that I will be overseeing. So, given that Kaylea one day comes to me and tells me that someone on her hall is doing something they shouldn't be doing, and I'll be like, okay, cool. Thank you for letting me know that, Kaylea. That's so kind of you. I think really and truly, I didn't share this earlier, but I also have had to grow in conflict resolution, really in the past 2 years of living in Midland. But I think seeking clarity truly is just like what I would do. Like you tell me that, say a girl brought a boy on the hall. Okay, well, that's not allowed. Surprise. DBU is special. And so in that, I think I would just seek clarity of going to said student and asking, hey, I heard this happened. Is that true? I think in every situation in the next position that I will be holding is to just seek truth and clarity, because it would be wrong of me to just point fingers. And as much as I would want to believe and trust you, there's also like room for clarity to be given and reasons as to like maybe it was her brother and maybe it was her dad, and so just seeking clarity I think is the biggest thing, and being willing to listen is probably the two things that I would do first, and then proceeding with how to deal with the issue given whatever it would be. So.
Do you want me to tell you first before? Or do you just want?
Either way.
Okay, I'll just. Because you're a sister of total of 3, how do you confront conflict as a sister?
I am really not good at this. It's like
Same.
probably the most difficult relationship for me to confront in my life, or 2 relationships. But I feel like I've learned a lot in just adulthood because, unlike you, I'm older than both my sisters, and so I've always been kind of like mothering, and now both my sisters are adults, which is crazy, and so I've had to kind of figure out what is the balance of like, I can't just tell them outright what to do anymore. I probably never should have, but I did for a long time, and just letting them make the decisions that they're going to make, even if I think they're a mistake, because sometimes they're not. Sometimes I'm wrong. And being a comforting presence whenever, mistakes are made, I think is the biggest thing. But I guess just like in conflict, we've really learned, I think, the 3 of us, how to be just friends, really good friends. And we have our version of, you want to go to Sonic? It's
That's
like,
good.
You want to get some tea? So, I don't know, Kennedy maybe could tell a different story, but I feel like the 3 of us have struck a pretty good balance.
That's good.
As of now, with that. So, but probably no thanks to me. I don't know. I'm still learning.
Okay, so how do you confront conflict as a father or just a man in general? Because I don't really know.
Well, I'll answer maybe the more narrow one that might be easier as a father, even though I feel like I'm still learning here, because it is definitely difficult because I, like having, someone I can reason with, but with my almost 5-year-old and my almost 3-year-old, that can't happen.
Right.
They do something and I want to have a conversation and they're still, mad, or they're still wanting to visit their brother or something. So it doesn't work like that. So I think one thing, there's also something before that. I don't normally get as angry or mad, but I found it's really interesting. When my kids do something against one another, I get a lot more angry and mad. And it's like, where is this coming from? Why does this happen? So, the first step is real. I think, like you said, controlling your emotions. I think that it goes much better confronting them about what they did when I can have some time. Okay, they don't understand. They don't know what they're doing is really harmful to their brother. And I can calm myself, put things in perspective, and then go to them. And normally I have to kind of set them apart from the situation. They're very fixated on things, and so I have to kind of set them aside from either their brother or from the situation in their room, and then have some time, to hear from them and ask, hey, what were you doing? What's going on? And give them a time to, I like what you say, define themselves. It's really hard with a 3-year-old or a 5-year-old, but it is helpful for them to admit, hey, here's what I did. I was frustrated. I wanted to play with that toy. So getting clarity, I think, and letting them be honest at the beginning, I think has been really helpful. But then allowing them to, admit they're wrong, and then let them know why they're getting a consequence. Those have been the ways I guess I've handled it, and I'm still growing. Still have a long way to go, I think. Well, can I pray for you to close? Heavenly Father, we are gracious that you bestow on us all the good gifts that you have. And as Kaylea has said, friendship is one of the best. And so let us value it. Let us have a heart that wants to put it at the highest rung, as relationships are some of the most meaningful things that we have. And the proof of it is salvation with you at its core is a relationship. And so help us to look to these good and wise principles that your scripture offers, that men who have gone before us have authored, that we can look at how to be caring, but also wise, but also not compromising the principles and who we are and who you've told us to be. And God, I just pray that you would put your hands on Kaylea as she goes forward in the next step in life, and let her be someone who is a great wellspring of this ability to confront in ways that are life-giving and unifying. God, I pray that she would be someone who is ready to be honest and have truth on their lips, but also have a heart that brings people together and people desire to go, there's something there that I want. What is the basis of this? And it leads them to know you, God. Lord, we just thank you for her thought and her time here at MCA and all that you've given her and the people she's blessed. And so we ask all this in your wonderful and gracious name, Jesus. Amen.